Hey everyone, welcome to Unique Ways with Thomas Gerard, an audio podcast. We've got a really awesome guest today to describe without labels. Our guest is a person that's curious about expression in all its forms, but particularly in how it relates to space and awareness, dreams of a world where everyone has the space and confidence to express their own understanding of where they live, says fear shows where to look, and loves the sun. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Maria Lantin. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Can I ask you the 20 questions?
Yes, please.
Great. Question 1, tell me a little bit more about yourself. What do you do?
I do a lot of things. At the moment, I'm taking a bit of a break from a lot of things. I just resigned my post at Emily Carr, effective September 30th. So it's a bit of a moment of restock for me. But in terms of, the things that I have done and I still, really am attached to, they're related to, well, a lot of it is related to technology. My background is in computer science. I have an undergrad and a PhD in computer science, and I went into the arts after that. So I'm very, very still enamored with what machines do and how they do it. I would say, though, that about 5 years ago, 6 years ago, I started to really lose my religion about that, not even knowing that I had that religion in some ways. And so when the 2016 election happened, it was a sort of awakening for me that technology and the sort of the history or the story of progress in relation to technology was not correct, that that I had switched, so that the religion that I had grown up with for technology, and that it's just no religion can fulfill the role of just sort of knowing where you live, right? Like there's no knowledge structure that will give you all the answers. And so that kind of happened, and that's when I switched the lab from being about stereoscopic 3D technology and immersive technology, which I still love, but at the time that's what the lab was, sort of titled on. It was called the Stereoscopic 3D Center, and I changed the name to the Basically Good Media Lab in order to really keep a focus on sort of a humble way of being in the world, and recognizing that it's very hard to do good, and it means moving slowly, and it means sometimes rejecting the thing that'll give you the most money at the particular moment. But in the end, it'll mean hopefully better products or better experiences for people. So I'm still into the art, I'm still into technology, I'm still into the blending of physical and digital worlds. But I'm trying to reframe that, first of all, under a different auspice, right? Because I'm not at Emily Carr anymore, but also trying to also make sense of where the world is at right now and what would be the most appropriate use of technology.
Great. Just a note for our audience, Maria and I don't know each other yet, but people in similar circles kept bringing up that I should have you on as a guest. So here you are. Number 2, what's a key piece of knowledge that makes you different?
I was so flummoxed by that question. I was like, yeah, first of all, there's been so many pieces of information, knowledge that have come to me that seemed interesting at the time, and it was only sort of later that I saw how they affected me. So it's hard to pinpoint which was more key than another. But I can also see this question in terms of context. So there's a few different things. One, I grew up in Quebec, in a small town, and my father was a Baptist minister and had a church first in our basement, and then later he built his own church. So I grew up steeped in that environment, and later, rejected it in a way that was like, at the time, it was just a rejection. It was just a kind of like, I'm going off to university, I'm learning about things that are contradicting the things that I was told. And it was a kind of walking away. And now, as I'm sort of coming to terms with changes in my life, I realize that influence of that original religion and being steeped in that in the church has been instrumental. And I'm always kind of that tingling sense of when something becomes over specified has helped me, right? So when I talk about losing my technology religion, I think being able to lose my original religion that I was born into has informed that, right? That I can always spot when I'm getting a little bit too, when things are getting a little too specified and not enough specified at the same time, right? That they're really targeting your gaze towards a certain area and deliberately obscuring others. So that's I would say that's been key in my life, and it's something that I'm still unraveling. And in fact, I'm sort of toying with the idea of forming my own church. And the funny thing about that is my dad has Alzheimer's now, and I was walking with him just the other day, and he doesn't remember that he was a Baptist minister at all, right? Like his memory of all that is gone. And I said to him, "Hey, Dad, I'm thinking of starting a church," and he just burst out laughing. He thought that was the funniest thing ever, and then he said, "I don't think so." And so, it's just something that I keep sort of rolling around in my head. And another key piece, I think, has been an investigation into the mind. So I've been a meditator for, I guess, 23 years now. And at some point, I started investigating free will. And why is it that there's a point at which I function without will, right? That there's a lot of things and that I do that are just sort of automatic. And then I started to investigate where does that end exactly? And in the end of that investigation, it was like, well, it doesn't seem like free will is a thing, right? Even though it feels like it, that there has to be some sort of trust in sort of the basic intention that drives you, because most of your behaviors are automatic. So that has informed a lot of what I do in terms of always, every morning and every night, doing a reset into the intention of helping, basically, and love and helping.
Perfect. Number 3, why this of all things? Why do you do what you do?
Oh, I don't know how to answer that. Like I said, the no free will thing is pretty strong. A lot of, I would say, probably, in terms of the technology end of things, back when I first started it, this would have been like mid 80s. I was enamored by the fact that it was something that would always repeat an action precisely the same all the time, and that I could tell it what to do and it would do it. There was, I was enamored with the algorithm, right? How to piecewise break down an action and tell the computer to do it. So there was a control aspect to why I love technology. That doesn't drive me so much anymore. But I would say now it's more about collaboration with technology. So I seem to just love systems. So trying to figure out right now, say, what's going on with the world? Why is there such mass confusion about? That seems to be a big driver for me, and I think that is the same driver that um, put me in touch with technology, is because it's all about systems and how things work together.
Great. And just one more note for our audience. If you like where we're going with this, we've had a number of Vancouver-based, I guess, scholars or people with doctorates. We had Dr. Philippe Pasquier, Dr. Ronald Kari, Dr. Amja Hal, Dr. Garnet Hertz has been on the show. So definitely check those episodes out if you like this one. Number 4, what does your future look like?
Right now I don't have a clear picture of that, and nor do I want one. The point of resigning my post at Emily Carr without a next thing immediately lined up was that I wanted to know what free space feels like. I wanted to feel the fear of that and the exhilaration of that. I just wanted to feel where my mind would go and what I would be attracted to. So I'm still, just beginning that process. So I can't tell you exactly what the future will look like, but in general, I am looking for community. Even though I'm a deep introvert, I get so much out of working with others, and to have a shared goal. So that is, the one good thing about being in an institution. There are so many difficulties about being in an institution, but if the institution is healthy and has a well articulated mission, you can really feel that you're part of a greater whole, and I do love that. So it'll probably involve something, maybe a small group, maybe a big group, maybe an institution, I don't know. So that's part of it. And it probably will involve trees and movement, because those are also huge drivers for me, like forests and also just physically moving, like dancing or any kind of somatic practice.
Great. Number 5, and I think some audience members might be curious about this. Let's talk about location. How does the notion of place play into what you do?
Oh gosh. Well, I mean, these days I've been going back and forth between Montreal and Vancouver. Both, I mean, because I was, born and raised in Quebec, I have body memory of that place, and it is really strong when I go there. I speak differently. Of course, it's a different language, but it's also what I speak of and how I speak it is different. My body moves differently. It smells different. And, all of that is immediately apparent to me when I go there. And in Vancouver, the sense of space, the trees, the fresh air, is so strong, and I'm also very drawn to that. But it's not historically meaningful to me, at least not yet. So even though I've been here since 1993, so it's the project that I have with Alex Haas, who's an amazing designer artist. I've been collaborating with her for years now, and we have a project called the Epic Walk Diaries, and it was born out of a desire to know Vancouver better, because both of us, having come from different places and moved around quite a bit when we were young, never really understood what it was like to root to a place particularly, and definitely not rooting to Vancouver. Vancouver just, we could both obviously point out all the landmarks that people point out about Vancouver. And in my case, I could point out the best chocolate shop in Vancouver, but I couldn't tell you about the native plants. I couldn't tell you what was off the beaten path of, the sanctioned walking paths. Same. So, we started, walking around the perimeter of Vancouver hugging the shoreline as much as we could. And it's an ongoing project. We're now actually just crossing boundary to get to the other coast, the other shore. So, and through that, we've had so many discussions about routing and what is on the shore, who lives there, what's the history of that shoreline. Sometimes we have access, sometimes we don't. Sometimes it's very industrial, sometimes it's very rich, sometimes it's very poor. And always, though, there is plant life and sea life. So we've been able to collect materials as we walk and create an art project around that. So yeah, place is extremely important and becoming more important as I get older, for sure, because I think the local solutions scale, right? So for example, when we talk about sense making, there is a crisis in sense making right now in the world, and a lot of it is because we have disregarded or discounted too much the local news, right? Like we don't pay attention to where we live as much as we should. We pay a lot more attention to the latest pronouncements on Twitter or the Ukraine war, which is important for sure, but it's what proportion of my life should be spent thinking about the Ukraine war as opposed to logging in BC, for example.
Great. I'm glad you brought up Alex Haas. She was actually in my master's cohort at SFU.
Oh, great. Yeah.
She's awesome. I should see if she would want to come on. Number 6, if you had to start from the beginning, what advice would you give your former younger self?
Oh, I don't know. I think I probably would say learn to be alone early. So, when I started meditating when I was 29. So I wish I had started earlier because I suffered from social anxiety my entire life. And, when I was a kid, I remember being taken to the doctor with stomach aches and being, basically being told that I had anxiety and that I would succeed well in life. And yeah, it was a functional anxiety in the sense that I was very concerned with doing well, but it was also crippling. And so, but I didn't even know how crippling until I started to encounter others that didn't have that. So I think if I encountered meditation before I did, it would have been very useful. So if whenever I see 20-year-olds meditating, I'm like, oh my gosh, such a head start. So maybe it's the same advice as trees. It's like, when's the best time to plant a tree? Well, yesterday, right? But when's the second best time? Right now. So yeah.
Awesome. Number 7, what's a day in your life like?
Yeah. Well, it always kind of starts the same and ends the same, but the middle is super chaotic, and whatever happens is what happens. The start is I have a very good breakfast of seeds and fruit and yogurt that I make myself. Yeah, all of it is stuff that I make myself, or get from the farmer's market. And after I'm done that, I do somatic exercises. So it's kind of a meditative movement. And after that, I meditate for usually 30 to 45 minutes and, shower and then start answering emails. And after I'm done answering the first batch of emails in the morning, then it's whatever goes, right? Like I have a list of projects in order of priority, and then whatever is most inspired in the moment is what I do. And then at the end of the day, I always end in the same way. I meditate, do the crossword, and sleep.
Awesome. Number 8, Lifelong learning is a popular topic these days. How do you stay up to date?
Yeah, yeah, that's really tough because I am so curious about so many things. So I'm constantly reading. I always have at least 5 books on the go. These days, a lot of them have to do with sense making and with quantum physics, and also some neuroscience. And so that's like on a long form end of things. On the short form, I do a lot of Substack newsletters. So I probably have, I don't know, maybe 10 newsletters that come every day. And then I just scan and see. Some of them are pop culture, so that I can, you know, stay up to date on what, for lack of a better word, what the kids are doing without, having to participate in it day to day. And some of them have to do with academia. So, and that's the other thing. I have like ACM, IEEE, so I scan what's going on in those organizations. Yeah, I mean, and then of course people send me things to read. I read New York Times, The Guardian, Al Jazeera. So yeah, it's a varied. Oh, and I have the best newsletter I find these days for whatever reason. It's a manufacturing newsletter. It's called The Prepared. And I really love learning about how things are made and what new materials are on the scene, and how people are thinking about sustainability. And yeah, it's a really fascinating newsletter, and it's not always written by the same person. So you really get diverse points of view.
Great. What tools do you use? How much of it is digital? How much is analog?
I would say 90% is digital. I do have notebooks of 3 different sizes that I use for different kinds of thoughts. So whenever I'm trying to figure something out, it's always analog. I'm always writing in pencil, sometimes drawing. And then once I have an idea, and then I switch over to digital tools. So if it's sketching still, then I'll be in Procreate. If it's generative, I'll be in Touch Designer or Processing. I don't do Max MSP. I also program things from scratch. I program things with JavaScript a lot. So yeah, a lot of and then of course writing papers and things I do with I love the tool IA Writer, because I can I think it's, I actually don't even know if it's pronounced IA Writer, but it's spelled that way. Yeah, so it just, it can just blank out the screen, and all I have is, the screen and the words, and that helps me concentrate. And I love, love, love writing, and speaking to the lifelong learning question. Again, it's I learn by writing a lot of the time. So I just started writing in Medium, and I'm just right now working on an article about mimetic desire and multipolar trap and status. Like basically the desire for status. So just because I've read about those topics in 3 different places, and I just wanted to put them together. So yeah, so basically writing is also a digital tool for me, but it's a mental tool for learning.
We recently had John Maeda on, who has a blog separate from his personal website, maeda.pm. And I think it's super interesting how he uses the word blog today in 2022.
Right?
Everyone does, right? So
Yeah.
number 10, halfway here, how do you deal with work-life balance?
Oh, not very well, I must say. Yeah, when I was employed, I found it really hard to have good boundaries. But one thing is I did get to burnout. So I know what that feels like in my body now. So whenever I get close to that, I can identify it and put the brakes on. Usually, I know that I'm not in balance when I can't, I don't have any perspective, right? So, and I start not caring about the things that I normally care about. And even like not caring about, or not caring enough about my friends. You know, that feeling you get when you start, maybe you don't, I don't know, but like I get to a point where I will say no to getting together with friends because I have work, and then that's a clue for me. It's just like, you know, relationships are key to health, and you know, to be able to, you know, spend time with people, find out what they're doing, and get that recharge is important. Um, and you know, realizing too that often I don't need a whole lot of alone time to recharge, but I do need it, and I need it on a daily basis. And the reason for that is because there's a lot of sadness in the everyday, right? And I'm not even, I mean, and this is a particularly difficult time in the world with a lot of hard things happening on different scales. And but even when it's not like that, there's a lot of everyday sadness happening. I mean, I can pass somebody on the street and know how much they're suffering, and I can know that I can't do anything about that right now, and that I absorb that sadness. And by the end of the day, if I don't actually process that, if I don't spend the time to acknowledge all of the sadness that I witnessed in myself and in others, it's going to build up to the point that I can't feel anything. So, and that, you know, it doesn't take long. You know, we're talking like just 20 minutes of sitting and just thinking through the day and what happened and all the feelings of that. So just sort of realizing that sometimes we get so hung up about work and deadlines and what we should be doing and how many emails we're answering, but just taking 20 minutes can make a world of difference in mental health. So that's what I've realized, is sometimes I don't think I have time to take the time, but in fact I do, and I should.
Grade 11 is, if you weren't doing what you do now, what would you be doing?
Yeah, that's a good question. Obviously top of mind right now. And I'm very, very interested in social science because of this, because of sense making, right? Because of like, okay, how is it that we figure out what's going on and how to act, both on an individual basis and on a national or even civic basis. Like, so I think, you know, there's no way in my 20s that I would have gone there. Like that was so far, like I was saying to you before, like the social anxiety was so high. The idea of studying social science would not have entered my mind. That, you know, partially why technology was so appealing. It was just me and the computer. But now I'm like, yeah, I think if I were to go back and do another PhD, I think I would do it in social science.
12, what would you not like to do, particularly with your career?
Oh gosh. You know, I have gotten offers before to, you know, work for Amazon and, you know, companies as big as that, but there's no way that I would ever do that. There is something so blind about the way that they operate. It just scares me. You know, the move fast and break things is so scary to me. It's so anathema to what I think we should be doing. I really think we need to slow down.
Mm.
So yeah. And then, you know, anything that requires like disaster planning, like don't count on me. You know, I just don't like, I just don't have that kind of mind to foresee all of the problems that could happen. I'm inherently an optimist, and so like, so, you know, don't rely on me for cybersecurity.
13, what's your favorite word, quote, or sentence?
My favorite. Well, there's one that I repeat every single day and meditate on, and that's death. Death will happen, and it quite likely will happen without warning.
Mm,
So, yeah.
mm, great. Great. 14, do you have a least favorite word, quote, or sentence?
uh, I was going to say everything happens for a reason, but I think one of your other guests said that. But there's another one. In fact, I have some rules or I had when I was leading the lab, some rules about speech in the lab, and we weren't allowed to use any turns of phrases that were violent, especially towards other beings. So, for example, killing two birds with one stone was absolutely forbidden, and instead we would say feed, two birds with one hand. And so we had we had replacements for things, but every time we caught ourselves in a violent sort of metaphor, turn of phrase, we would just rephrase.
Great. 15, if you had to pick one word to describe yourself, what would you choose?
Oh, definitely curious. Yeah.
Mhm, mhm.
Mm.
16, what keeps you up at night?
Oh, well, actually sleep really, really well. But the things that get me the most anxious are the question, am I doing the right thing? What, is fear keeping me from doing the thing that I really want to do? Right. So those are the things that keep me up for sure. Like, and especially when it has to do with others. Like I can, do pretty well on my own, but as soon as, you're leading a team or intersecting with a lot of people and teaching, and like teaching especially is so like, am I telling them the right thing? Am I exposing them to the right material? Am I explaining it in the right way? Like, this it's I think a lot about that.
Final stretch, number 17, what's a dream you're chasing?
Fearlessness, absolutely. Fearlessness. Yeah.
18, what inspires you?
Trees. It's I've been reading a lot about mimetic desire and also status and how much it drives our behavior. And status is especially connected to what we do in life and who we associate with and how many accolades we get, and like what, it's a relational thing, right? So we're constantly trying to figure out how we're being mirrored by the world. And when I lost my identity of professor, um, I I've, I didn't lose my academic identity. I still feel like I have that, but I feel like there's something that's been lost in terms of like my status in the world by leaving an institution. And I started to think about that in this sort of void and the emptiness that I felt there. And I started to realize that, when we think about status and even mimetic desire, which is the desire to mimic other people's desires, it's always been centered around humans, right? For good reasons. Obviously, we're going to focus more on our own species because that's what we understand and we interact with a lot. So, but I started to think that one of the ways that I felt better about what was happening was to think of it in a much wider scope with the non-human world. And so, what would it mean for me to behave in such a way that this beautiful tree that I admire, that I see every day, would hold me in high esteem? And I started to think about that sort of status, that how much I love these. I mean, I have some favorite trees that I visit every day, and some trees that I visit when I go to the Pacific Spirit Forest. And I started to think, wow, I love them so much, right? Like I feel such a connection to them. And, what would it be like to feel like I was doing good by them? So I would say that I get a lot of inspiration out of widening my scope of influence, and to think about, you know, how everything is always working together, right? That's what life is. It's sort of interacting in order to, it's all relational, basically, is what I'm saying. And so I get a lot of inspiration from thinking about that and how big the world is.
Great. I'm reminded of previous guest, Dr. Ron Wakari, who has a book out with MIT Press about more than human worlds.
Mm-hmm.
Number 19, any advice you'd like to share?
Oh, advice. I would say that the one advice that I give my students a lot is not to compromise on the things you value the most. And every component of that is important, right? So not compromising on your values means that you need to know what those values are. And so taking the time to articulate that, and knowing that they may change over the course of your life, but knowing what they are at a particular moment is very important. And also to be able to rank them, so that when something has been crossed, and that you can always sort of, if you need to compromise for a short period of time, then maybe you could do so with a value that's lower down the list, that kind of thing. So ranking is also important. So yeah, to me, that's and the reason it's very important to not compromise on the things you value the most is because if you do, you won't be able to think properly. There will be conflict in your mind that will always keep you from seeing things clearly. And as an artist, that not being able to see clearly will make your art not reach its goal.
Great. And number 20, and I think some of our audience is curious about this. How can we keep tabs on you for the listeners? How can we follow you and see what you're doing?
Well, I have a website, marialantin.com, which I am going to be updating quite a bit, but it has all my work on there, including the most recent work that's online and at the AGO. And I'm also on Medium, so you can look me up there. Right now, there's one article that I published on Medium, which is about text to image generators and whether they can make good collaborators as they are right now. So, but yeah, those two places would be the main thing. I'm also on Instagram, but my Instagram is actually a lot more about the natural world, not so much about my academic pursuits.
Great. Well, thanks so much, Maria. I've been looking forward to this for a while, and I was super excited when you said yes about coming on the show. I know some of our listeners have been waiting for this one for a while. So thank you so much for being on.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Yeah, so many things, so many more things could have been said, but I think we covered a lot of ground. So thank you so much for the questions.
Thanks.
Oh, actually, before we end, can I ask you a
Mhm.
question?
Sure.
Have you answered those 20 questions?
I've been asked to, and
Okay,
I'm going to at some point. Yeah.
great, great. That would be lovely.
Great. Thanks so much.
Nice. Thank you.